Tier 1 Special Forces teams, CIA paramilitary operators, private military contractors. The common thread that brings all three of these together is going to be their weapon layouts, their gear setups, and things of that nature. However, this is a paintball channel, so I'm going to try to be more on the specific side as far as paintball goes, namely with the marker configurations and the guns. However, I will also say that a lot of this stuff will be airsoft inspired as far as their equipment configurations and things like that. And I intend for this to be as much of a comprehensive video as possible for those airsoft players who may want to get into more tactical paintball players that are wanting to get more tactical with their stuff, and generally speaking, ways to try to make your game a lot more immersive than what is usually the norm with paintball. However, this video is intended to be as comprehensive as possible, so be forewarned, this is going to be very much detailed and a long video on top of that. So with that being said, kick back, relax, and maybe you may find a little bit of inspiration in all this stuff. So there you go.
Cut off from our primary LZ. Going to LZ2. Repeat, going to LZ2. You're starting to piss me off. Now cool out.
Oh, I am cool. You should see me when I'm hot.
Help me.
Alright, let's have a look at uniforms. Now, for any team of operators, military, special operations, or anything of the sort, uniforms provide several things. One, it's not just camouflage, but it's also to discern one another from friend and foe. It's also a symbol of solidarity, unity, and even a sign of intimidation, as these particular uniforms are used the world over, both military, special operations, and this is all dependent upon what the unit's SOPs are, what they're doing as far as the operation, as well as what particular mission profile they seem to be running at that given time. This is just a small sampling of such uniforms and so on and so forth. Okay. The pictures you're seeing right here are American Army Rangers during the 1983 invasion of Grenada, Operation Urgent Fury. Now, there weren't OD uniforms, and the uniform design in particular is the third pattern of jungle fatigues that was made famous during America's involvement in Vietnam. Now, as far as the uniform design goes, it's one of those classic types that you just can't seem to get away from. Reproductions are abundant, and for a lot of teams, this might be something to look into as far as wanting to set up your own identities as paintball players, airsoft, whatever. But this also shows an evolution, how we went from this jungle fatigue style and the slanted pockets to more modern, such as what's pictured here, U.S. Woodland BDUs, this 4-pocket jacket, straight pockets. This was a pretty effective uniform for a good while with the military, and the pattern is considered a timeless classic as well these days. But as time goes on, stuff becomes obsolete, but some things just never die. One of the main things about any kind of elite unit is that they've got a lot of leeway into customizing their uniforms and equipment. Now, as you can see from this picture, a Special Forces operator or long-range recon soldier during the Vietnam War, look at his jacket. The bottom pockets from his BDU jacket are on the sleeves. This would be a field-modified uniform. Now, fast forward to the early days in the war on Iraq when striker units were becoming a thing, usually with the 25th Infantry and the 2nd Infantry Division, and how they were trying out the striker team idea. This uniform pictured here was commonly referred to as a close combat uniform. This is in both a 3-color desert pictured here and also in a woodland variant right here. Now, these definitely have their place within the purview of our discussion, as far as these take a lot of cues from special forces, such as the pockets on the sleeves, which for the regular military made a lot of sense now for body armor friendly pocket placement. And that leads us into another evolution, as these uniforms led to these. First one on the right being the Army Universal Combat Pattern in the ACU cut. And the center is going to be the OIF, Operation Enduring Freedom, and Operation Iraqi Freedom Camouflage Pattern, which is Cry Multicam in the True Spec Tactical Response uniform style. And last but not least, the Army's latest OPC, Operational Camouflage Pattern, which was also developed by Cry Precision as Scorpion W2. Now, this is the latest and the greatest for Big Army, but has its roots within Special Forces. Another evolution would be what's called the combat uniform. Now, because of body armor and everything, your typical BDU jackets or your ACU tops aren't exactly the best when you're wearing body armor. Hence, the combat uniform was developed. And with that being said, a lot of it was based on like Under Armour stuff, but now with less drip from heat, as you can see with this picture of a Marine Raider wearing a full combat uniform. This stuff comes in a wide range of patterns, colors, and it's been one of the latest and greatest for special operations, tier 1 units, and even contractors and law enforcement, as you can see with this example from Flash Force Industries in the Tiger Stripe pattern. Next piece of uniform that is worth looking at is the tried and true military type flight suit. Made from Nomex, this one has become pretty popular, especially in the early days of the war on terror in Iraq with the IED threat, because the materials used in BDUs of the time were not capable of dealing with high heat, especially from the IED threat as mentioned. As this picture shows, U.S. Marines were starting to wear military type jumpsuits a lot more until things could be done with the R&D side to deal with the heat from IEDs. But it's also used a lot with the Special Operations Forces, especially when they need something that's easy to get on and off and is less cumbersome and more breathable for their particular operations. For paintball, the idea of wearing a single-piece jumpsuit is a good option, especially if you're looking for disposable coveralls, but Other than that, this isn't a bad idea. The only drawback is not being able to just drop your pants to use the bathroom. Other than that, it's good. Okay, if casual is your thing, this may be up your alley. Now, the guy that's guarding General Schwarzkopf here back in the 1991 Persian Gulf War is a member of the U.S. Army's elite Delta Force, a Tier 1 Spec Ops unit. Now, this is pretty standard fare for clandestine operators as far as not wanting to be seen as military, and this definitely falls into the realm of the PMCs or private military contractors as far as wearing civilian clothing with their tactical gear. It's so that way if they're operating within close proximity of military units that they can be seen as contractors and not as soldiers. However, international law will say that they're mercenaries, but that's now a gray area these days. However, this plays well for Tier 1 units, especially when they don't want to be seen as soldiers if they're captured. The Tier 1 guys could say that they are contractors, but as I said, legal gray area as far as the Geneva Conventions, but for paintball, it's definitely a cool thing to roll with, especially if you like to run casual and be more comfortable instead of wearing fatigues all the time. Alright, let's look at gear. Now, what you see pictured here is a Chi-Com chest rig. This one in particular was designed to work with the Chinese Type 63, which was a Chinese take on the Simonoff SKS carbine. Now, this kind of gear you will find the world over in one way or another, as the Chi-Com chest rig has been popular, not just with the Chinese military, the Soviets, the North Vietnamese, Viet Cong, but also with terrorist groups in Africa, South America, as well as other places in the world. This one pictured here is the more iconic version. This one is a early model with 3 mag pouches, each able to hold a single 30-round AK mag, plus 2 grenade pouches on each side, or general purpose pouches, but they generally put hand grenades in it. Now, it's solid, it works, but let's look at something more evolved, shall we? This one right here. This particular one has been copied the world over by companies like Strike Force, TAC Force, Blackhawk Industries, most notably, with its 4 magazine pouches, each one able to hold AR mags, AK mags, or anything in between, 2 big utility pouches. This was a gold standard for years with Special Forces. Now, we've got these more low-profile Molly-style chest rigs, some with internal magazine carriers, some where you can Molly it on. And this stuff is ubiquitous these days, and this stuff pretty much works, but best to top off with a belt or something. Okay, if chest rigs aren't your thing, then maybe web gear is a good option. As you can see pictured here, this setup is a 1956 or M56 load carrying equipment. This stuff was synonymous with the Vietnam War, and we made this stuff in the tens of millions throughout the conflict. Now, this stuff was pretty good, however, the materials used for the time weren't good. This is kind of the transition when we were getting away from the canvas and moving over to nylon equipment. Now, with that being said, you can find this stuff practically for dirt cheap or reproductions on the surplus market if you're looking for a more Vietnam style loadout, but There are other configurations you can go with, and let's check out a couple of those. Okay, this particular setup is called a stabo rig. This was used a lot by special forces teams when they're operating over the fence if they had to extract in a hurry. Now, what makes this particular rig unique is it's a mix of the M1956 as well as the World War II and Korea era gear for the Browning automatic rifle. Now, the reason why SF guys like this particular loadout is because the magazine pouches for the BAR could hold 5 20-round mags for your M16, which were common back then. However, the canteen pouches, with the exception of the one closest to the front, are M56, and you could hook this up to anything. You can use M56 pouches as well as other things, but I digress as we take a look at the second iteration of this particular setup. Okay, right here, as you can see, this is more of the modern for that particular period. As you can see, a little bit of padding on the straps for the stabo rig. You got canteen pouches that are used to hold extra magazines, which was a common thing for that time, as well as actual magazine pouches and the like, but this was pretty much phased out as the war ended. Alright, now let's look at something a little more on the semi-modern side. This would be Alice gear, all-purpose, lightweight, individual carry equipment. Now, this came about in the late 70s, early 80s, and for many paintball players, this was like a go-to if they had the money for it at the time, because the cheapest gear to get their hands on back in the 80s for paintball was leftovers from Vietnam, particularly the M56 gear, but I digress. I've used this stuff for years, and the next picture coming up is going to be one of my personal configurations. As you can see, the magazine pouches, they're able to hold 3 20-round AK mags, 3 30-round AR mags, or almost any 100-round pod you could put out there as far as paintball goes. However, some have shown that they could use TCM mags in them, but that's neither here nor there. This is just a run-through of what you can do with some of this stuff. Now, this particular setup right here is entirely Black Hawk made. We're talking the belt, the mag pouches, canteen pouches, butt pack, the suspenders. All this stuff, Black Hawk may not make it anymore, but it can still be found on the second-hand market, eBay, Amazon, and the like. So keep an eye out for it. Next gear setup is the Israeli Isaac setup. Now, this one here is the rifleman setup. Right here is the machine gun setup. All pretty good. Could store a lot of kit, but if Molly stuff is your thing, then this particular setup might be what you need. Alright, now if load-bearing equipment or web gear isn't your thing, what about tactical vests? As you can see pictured right here is a early example of the LBV 88 load-bearing vest, also part of the integrated warfighter system, as I believe it's called. This has been one of those vests that have been around for decades. You could find real cheap and easy to work with. Sad thing is, fixed pouches, and I've used this particular type before, and it served me well. As you can see the picture coming up right here. Yeah, that's me. 2 weeks after I got my tattoo, and rolling a paintball game after that. But if modular is more your thing, then we have something like this, which is it's final evolution off the LBV-88 system, but what about more foreign stuff, like this one here? This is a South African Defense Force assault vest. As you can see, flexible, versatile, and this has been used the world over. However, our vests have evolved considerably from your standard stitched pouches stuff like the vests you're seeing now. And then we've got other ones more specialized, but what about if you need to swap things over, such as more modular? Your basic Molly tactical vest. Now, this is nothing special. What had the sewn-on pouches originally now has Molly pouches on it that we could swap things around as you need. Nothing really to write home about on this vest, though it also does have the capability of attaching a military-issue pistol belt, so you can use both Alice and Molly pouches with it, or one or the other. Sky's the limit on this one. Operator survivability is now the new major factor for a lot of gear development. In this case, plate carriers have become a brand new way for the operator, such as the one pictured here. This kind of vest has found its usage across the board from conventional forces, special operations, tier 1 units, and contractors alike, as far as having a vest where you could have your gear but also have the survivability and the protection of ballistic plates and Kevlar. Now, the next gen version is this one. Everything is laser cut. This is supposed to reduce weight, make things a little more breathable, and stronger for prolonged operations. However, I'm not particularly sure if this thing is on the battlefield. The M16 rifle. Love it, hate it. This Okay, for paintball players that are looking to have an AR setup, you got a couple options. One is the out-of-the-box solution. Even if you're running a hopper fed, it'll still work, such as this U.S. Army Alpha Black. This one's out of my personal collection with an acid tactical paracord sling on it. However, this is fairly flexible in its own right, even though it's basic. The second one is a little more evolved. This one is my brother's Alpha Black. It's set up with the Project Salvo fore-end on there, vertical grip pod deal, and it's set up to be the light machine gun. However, this is one of the many AR-15 style things you can do with your out-of-the-box solution. Then you also have your mag-fed stuff. Okay, if mag-fed is your thing as far as a AR style, the Tip and Stormer would be considered an acceptable solution. However, it's pretty much a rehash of the 98 one way or another, and it's probably a little cheaper, but in my opinion, it wouldn't be aesthetically pleasing unless you do some serious modifications to the thing. The Tipman TCM. This is pretty much the purest version of a AR mag fed I've seen in a long time, built by Tipman. Yes, it is a 98 derivative because it uses the same kind of bolt and other internal components in the clamshell design. However, with that being said, this thing is pretty much AR in terms of its handling characteristics, and this would be the best one of the bunch for a mag-fed AR platform. MaxTac, Honor Core. Either way, the TGR2 paintball marker, if you could find it online for a good price, it's still a very robust and reliable AR platform paintball marker to use. One of the unique features about it was that it used a spring system to change the velocity settings. My only gripe about it is that it's got a tank and stock configuration rather than a more braided coil air system as far as feeding the air into it. Other than that, as far as aesthetics go, it is pretty good toward being that AR system as far as its controls being more modern in terms of it being ambidextrous and the selector switch and the mag release go, and it's pretty good from everything I heard. Okay, the Tiberius Arms T15, now called First Strike T15. As far as being a magazine-fed marker goes, this one has definitely got its strong suits, being able to use both round ball and first strike rounds, the shaped projectiles, and in an AR-15 format with the charging handle, mag release like an AR. For a paintball player, this would be probably a good option to go for. However, as I said, I'm not exactly a fan of the air and stock, but to each his own on that particular format. But other than that, might be worth something looking into. It's a classic Tipman X7. This was my marker for God knows how many years. Right up to today, I went from an A5 to the X7, and I will say I preferred the Classic over the Phenom. That was just me. However, what can be said about the X7 is that it was an evolution off the A5. You could put in a response trigger, you could put in an E trigger, change the end cap to stock, you have an air through system, and quite frankly, the X7 was one of the most modular markers on the market in terms of tactical paintball, and for our intents and purposes for this particular segment of the video, we're going to be looking at it in its AR-15/M16/M4 configuration. Now, here it is in its AR configuration. As you can see, it's not too shabby, but what if you want to take it a step further? Right here. This would probably be the pinnacle of the X7 evolution in terms of it being a magazine-fed kit. This one made by Takamo, which is part of RAP4 Modern Combat Sports. Outfitted with a custom extended front end, the Gibbs paintball end cap, which allows you to put AR tubes on there. So I got a Colt SCW stock, and for being an AR system, this one would probably be the pinnacle of it for me, as far as it's looked closer to being like a H&K 416. The X7 Phenom. This is supposed to be the successor to the Tipman X7, carrying over a lot of its modular features as well as a brand new spool valve system. The other thing is that it only comes with an E-trigger and a semi-auto only trigger package. However, you could still use semi-auto even if the E-board isn't working. That was one of the best selling points to the X7 overall. However, when we're doing an AR build, it's good as far as parts interchangeability with the forend and stock, and here we go. Now for an AR build for this, you're going to need the aftermarket tip-and-made extension piece to make it look more like an AR-15 as far as the magazine goes. Other than that, the front sight, the forearm, the carry handle, rear sight, and the stock are all from the classic Tippmann X7, so you can definitely work with those. But what about if you're going magazine fed? Now, here we are here. This one is a MKP from Takamo, which is part of Modern Combat Sports, Rap 4. As you can see, you can use a lot of the X7 Phenom parts, the stock, the forend on here with a brand new body. You can still retain the trigger system, which is the reason why these Takamo kits are virtually worth the price and everything with it. Now moving on, we got a little diagram of all the stuff you can do with the classic X7 and its successor, the X7 Phenom, as we move forward to the final guns of this display. Milsig, one of the earliest pioneers of the magazine-fed craze. This one pictured here is their Para Pro model. Now, this would probably be one of the best, if not one of the OGs, if you will, for mag-fed paintball, especially for the AR-15 platform builds. As far as its ergonomics and handling, this one sadly does have the crossbolt style safety. However, its handling characteristics and everything else about it would make it a pretty damn good concept as far as getting your hands on a paintball marker that could look like an AR, as well as function a little bit like it. However, this is only the stepping stone to what would come later on down the road for Milsig, and it would be with right here. It would be with this one, the M17. Now, what makes this truly stand out is that the M17 was built to be a mechanical full auto at 17 shots a second. This one pictured here is their extreme duty carbine model, which is one that you would definitely need to be spot on with an AR build, as its mag release is exactly like an AR-15. The next one on the list is going to be their CQB model. Now, the CQB model is the exact same thing. However, what I don't really like about it is that the magazine release on here is the paddle lock style, similar to an HK or an AK style. However, it still cocks like an AR, still has the selector switch and everything else. And the last one is going to be their DMR, their designated marksman rifle. You can also use this one for an AR build, as well as it's pretty much a scaled up version of their extreme duty carbine, with the mag release being where it is. Other than that, all three could fire first strikes or standards, and this would be something definitely worthwhile for a paintball player to get their hands on for an AR build. Kalashnikov weapons. One time the hard currency of socialist solidarity, this weapon has been both the weapon of liberation and of oppression. Today you can find these things the world over in the hands of terrorists, insurgents, third world armies, tin pot dictators. It's cheap, however it is overall reliable, and it can be said that its ruggedness is legendary. Today, the Russian Federation still holds it as its weapon of choice, and for the United States, for clandestine operations which can't come to light, you will still find it in the hands of an operator. Alright, to kick this one off proper, we're going to go with Tippin's flagship for your good AK build. This one is going to be the Tippin 98 Custom Series. The one pictured here is their 98 Custom Pro, an evolution off past generations. This thing is rugged and as reliable as an AK rifle. Now, with upgrades, you can do plenty with this one. As the next picture is coming up right now, you can see this one is one that my brother and I built a while back with the Tippin AK Assault Kit. We got a response trigger, cyclone feed, hopper on here. We modded a RAP4 rail to the thing, as well as slapped on a bipod and a Tippin X7 AK front sight. And this one we use primarily as our team's light machine gun. However, you can do so much with various markers, and quite frankly, this is probably one of the best AK ones that I've seen so far from the 98 Custom Series anyway. Okay, next Tippin marker that we are going to be looking at for an AK build is one of my personal favorites, the Tippin Special Ops Paintball X7. This is the successor to the Tippin A5, and I gotta say, this is probably one of the best markers I ever used out of the Tippin lineup. Easy to work on, easy to mod. You can change the triggers, change magazine stocks, even the handguard, and quite frankly, this marker has been one of my personal favorites. As I mentioned in the AR segment, you could do plenty with it. I showed you the MagFed kit that I use for my AR build. However, since we're talking Kalashnikov, this one is not as bad as some would think for an AK setup. Now, right here as pictured with the air through stock, yeah, I know it's not a genuine AK stock, but it still serves its purpose. The front end, the front sight, and the magazine, it is still a badass. And next picture coming up right here, this is the Takamo Tornado AK-12 setup using classic X7 parts from Modern Combat Sports. They are still accepting pre-orders for this thing, and since this is built on the classic X7, you can put an E trigger in here, response trigger, look, feel just like an AK-12 if you're looking for a more modern Kalashnikov twist to an AK marker build. The Tippin A5, a paintball marker that will truly not be defined by its age. On first glance, this marker looks a lot like the Heckler & Koch MP5K submachine gun. However, thanks to third-party companies and the aftermarket paintball industry, the Tippin A5 has shown itself to be very flexible and has demonstrated the ability to change itself one way or another in the right hands, either through parts kits or straight up modifications. So as a Kalashnikov, this would be a good marker. As this picture shows, as the basic A5 with an AK body kit, this one made particularly by RAP4 with the solid Kalashnikov wooden stock and handguard. It is definitely, for all intents and purposes, a very good AK style for all you guys that like to play with hopper feds. But that doesn't end there. As we can see from this next picture, the Krinkov variant to it, which is the AKS-74U. My only gripe about this would be that it doesn't have the flash hider of the genuine article. However, size-wise, design-wise, and overall aesthetics look pretty good for its particular time. However, when we want to really modify it, nothing says good as magazine fed. As you see in this picture here, the Takamo Vortex magazine fed conversion kit for the A5 with the RAP4 Takamo AK parts kit on it. This is truly a very flexible marker for all you guys that want to do a solid Kalashnikov build. Okay, finishing off our Kalashnikov lineup for this particular one is going to be the successor to the Tippmann X7, the X7 Phenom. First of its type to include a macro line handle, so that way there are no external gas lines. It comes in both semi-auto only as well as an E-trigger setup. Smaller and using a spool valve system, the Phenom isn't a bad marker, and a lot of its external components are interchangeable with the classic X7. So with that being said, for a Kalashnikov build, it's not bad. As this picture shows, the Phenom with the AK mag kit, as well as the classic X7 AK stock front sight assembly and handguard. It's easy to see why the Phenom would be a good option for those that want a Kalashnikov style marker. However, if magazine fed is going to be your thing, don't fret none, because the Takamo Hurricane definitely helps accommodate that for one reason or another. As you can see pictured here, the Takamo Hurricane kit for the X7 Phenom with the Takamo wooden AK stock and handguard with front sight. Definitely a solid marker to work with. And now we see the old school advertisements for the classic X7 in its many variants. We got here the X7 Phenom with the addition of the UMP kit and all the parts that are interchangeable for both the classic and Phenom, as well as the Takamo MagFed kit selection guide.
Real clear.
What you're seeing is footage from Princess Gate, London in 1980, the Iranian hostage crisis, where members of an Iranian terrorist organization attacked the Iranian embassy in London. This was a televised thing for the world to see. For the guys at Heckler & Koch, this was a golden marketing opportunity to show their line of weapons, particularly their MP5 submachine gun, as it was used by members of Pagoda Troop, 22nd Special Air Service Regiment, as they hit the embassy, rescued the hostages, and killed the terrorists, with one in custody, another taken to hospital. And when you really think about it, this was the showing of Tier 1 counterterrorism at its finest. For Heckler & Koch, they were the company that supplied the new German military, the Bundeswehr, with their classic G3 assault rifle, which evolved into weapons like the MP5 submachine gun, the PSG-1 sniper rifle, as well as others with their delayed blowback roller locking design. Future weapons came about in the 90s with their G36, the UMP submachine gun, as well as their MP7 personal defense weapon. For Heckler & Koch, they are the gold standard for special operations, counterterrorism units, police SWAT teams, as well as special reaction forces and private security details. These weapons are the standard for those, and as a pop culture icon for anyone who calls himself the good guy. Okay, kicking off a good HK build would be a good marker to go with. The most iconic for this one would be the Tippmann A5. This is because the Tippmann A5, as you can see from its front and rear sight arrangement, and this one is the post-2003 variant pictured here, but the selector switch. This is, without a doubt, the closest thing that Tippmann has done for a good gun at that point. This is based on the H&K MP5K submachine gun. However, its modularity does allow itself to look like a wide range of other MP5 variants, from the SD model to standard, among other weapons platforms. And with its trigger system, it definitely works either with a response trigger or with the E trigger, or simply semi-auto. Pictured here is my personal Tippmann A5 using the BT 3-position car stock, a RAP4 fake MP5 magazine, and a flatline barrel, which looks very good as a mock suppressor for me. And with that being said, this marker is pretty much the de facto for any MP5 style build. Now, moving on, we got the BT Delta. Now, this is when Ben Tippmann was running the place before it got bought out by Kingman Spider. And as you can see, it's kind of like a 98 derivative, but that's neither here nor there. I haven't used this thing personally. However, as an attempt to build a marker that could be like an MP5, it wasn't that bad. It's kind of like a bastardization between the 98 and the A5 in a lot of respects. However, with that being said, we could definitely move on to other things as far as paintball markers go, because BT wasn't bad, but it didn't exactly have its Tippmann name brand heritage to work on. Okay, this is probably one of the best platforms to build on. The classic Tippmann X7, one of the most modular paintball markers Tippmann ever put out. Now, with the E-trigger, response trigger, its HK style selector switch, all lend itself very well to the X7's modularity to look like just about any weapon system you can think of, from ARs, AKs, and even the MP5. Now, here we got it with the HK curved MP5 style magazine, MP5 SD handguard, as well as their air-through stock system. This allows the X7 to definitely do well as an MP5 SD. However, I will say, aesthetic-wise, the standard rear sight that came with it, discard it. I didn't find any use for it. If you're going to be spot on, you need an actual diopter style sight for that rail system. You can get that at any airsoft shop. Now, moving on, we got another version with the G36 UMP style folding stock, as well as its standard magazine. This is another way you could have this thing look like a cool HK style gun one way or another, because of everything that HK did with it. Another thing from the classic X7 lineup is a late entry to the game for them, which would be their UMP setup, utilizing a straight mag G36 folding stock, which the UMP also used, and the UMP front end. Also a good style for the X7 one way or another. Keep in mind, as I said, the classic X7 and the Phenom, the stocks, the handguards are all interchangeable, so you could mix and match if you have either or. Now, moving on, we've got the X7 Phenom, its successor, curved magazine, which is standard for this particular type, with the X7 stock, as well as the classic X7's MP5 front end as a standard. However, if assault rifles are more your thing, the X7's got it going with their G36 setup. Same type of folding stock, the rear sight setup as with the classic G36 series, as well as the G36 handguard. However, Tippmann did drop the ball when they discontinued this thing. I don't know why, but that's pretty much paintball politics for you, right? Now, with that being said, this thing is pretty damn functional one way or another. However, we do have another BT entry for this particular setup. And right here, the BT TM7, utilizing speedball mechanics. However, for BT, this thing was superb. And aesthetics-wise, this looks like the HK MP7 personal defense weapon. Built-in standard retractable buttstock. You can switch the sights, add in a rip clip. And this thing would serve you pretty damn well as a personal defense setup, which is one reason that for its sheer looks and its sleek design, probably why Greg Hastings put it in a lot of his video games. Other than that, the TM7 is also superb for an out-of-the-box HK style look. However, let's get into MagFed. As you can see, we got the Takamo Vortex kit. This is on the A5 setup, and as you can see, the standard AR style magazine. Keep in mind, when it comes down to HK weapons, HK, those guys, they did a lot with that roller locking design in a variety of calibers, from your 5.56, your 7.62mm, 9mm, 10mm, 40 S&W onward. So you could find a wide range of standards or customized capabilities for your particular HK weapons build. And for this, anything from Tippmann would be your best friend on this matter. Okay, the picture you guys are seeing right now is that of a U.S. Navy SEAL with a Viet Cong prisoner. What this particular operator is carrying in his hand is something interesting that you may not have heard about being used during Vietnam, but the U.S., particularly Navy SEALs, adopted the G3 and its variants like this one pictured here in 5.56 on a limited basis as somewhat of a alternative. Now, other than that, we're discussing other weapons aside from HKs, Kalashnikovs, and AR platforms, as these can be seen around the world, such as in this picture here. We have either a Australian or New Zealand SAS operator carrying a FNFAL, or the British designation of L1A1, I believe it is. However, with that being said, other weapons fall under a unique category, either within the assault rifle spectrum, submachine gun, or personal defense weapon systems. Now, with that being said, yeah, there is going to be some overlap as far as certain weapon systems go here and there. However, with that being said, we're going to be discussing the weapons that you can find or put together yourself. However, this is merely just scratching the surface on this particular subject matter. Okay, let's talk more up close and personal weapons like PDWs and the like. What's pictured here is a Tippmann TCR. It's a evolution off the TIPX pistol made by Tippmann. This one you could either use a remote line or use CO2 cartridges. And for its size, this is an ideal PDW platform to work with. However, there isn't much in terms of aftermarket, with the exception of a Angler-made stock option for this thing. However, Definitely one thing to look at if you're looking for something compact for CQB work. However, if pistol kits are your thing, we got this right here. This is called the Sarge, built by a good friend of mine that goes by the name Sarge and Eric Engler himself. This thing is best serviced with the remote line adapter for it. However, idea is pretty much a new top kit that just slaps right onto it, hooks into the back. You got the ability to put sights on it, a vertical hand grip where the rail is, and a folding stock makes it ideal for a CQB setup if you're looking for something that is very familiar.
Where the fuck is he?
Let's go! Go! Go!
Okay, next weapon that we're going to be talking about is the Uzi submachine gun made by Israel. This weapon started as an evolution off a Czechoslovakian CZ-53, I think it is. However, the Israelis used it for tank crews and stuff like that. However, its great claim to fame and famous operations is in the aftermath of the 1972 Munich Olympic massacre, when the Israeli Special Forces and their intelligence service Mossad used it against the Palestinian terror organization Black September. However, this weapon, because of its compact size, it is considered a submachine gun. However, it still falls under the PDW category. With that being said, despite all that, it has become a firm favorite among special forces, counter-terror, and both military and law enforcement, as well as personal protection teams, such as this picture right here during the takedown of the guy who tried to kill Ronald Reagan, the Secret Service agent deploying that Uzi. Now, paintball-wise, you've got the FT12 as an ideal base, as you see the one pictured here. The Uzi stock here has been modified to the gun, compliments of Mr. Eric Engler himself. And the FT12, from its sight profile, its top charging handle, this is every bit like the genuine article of the Uzi submachine gun. Okay, next gun up is going to be the FN SCAR series. Now, SCAR is the acronym for Special Operations Combat Assault Rifle. Due to early issues with the M4 carbine, US SOCOM wanted an alternative weapon system to meet their particular needs, especially with high endurance, high round count capabilities, and good ergonomics. Now, FN was pretty much able to oblige in two versions, a light and a medium. Now, the light being a 5.56 and the heavy being a 7.62. However, when improvements were made to the M4 platform, the US SOCOM opted to drop the light version but still keep the heavy version, which is still in use today with a lot of special operations units like the Rangers, Navy SEALs, Delta, as well as other clandestine operations units. Aside from that, the SCAR is fairly new and a relatively modern gun for anybody who's interested in it. With that being said, for a solid paintball gun, as far as the SCAR platform goes, you've got a few options that you could work with. Now, the first gun on the list is going to be the MaxTac TGR-1, as you could see right here. Very much a solid paintball marker from everything I've heard. The only thing is you got to swap out the springs to adjust the pressure. This particular one, to keep it spot on, you've got to run a remote line, but to really be spot on, when you get it out of the box, change the sights. From the rear sight, you need an actual SCAR rear sight and a front flip sight, easily available. Now, for you Tippmann freaks, you can get a Tippmann Assault Kit, which is a SCAR style folding buttstock and flip up sight. This was built for the X7 Phenom, however, you can use it on the classic Tippmann X7, as well as the early mag-fed kits like the MK7 and the MKP, as you can see pictured right here, right about now. As you can see, this is the X7 Phenom with the MKP mag-fed conversion kit, as well as the assault stock and front sight. Just as I said, if you want something more spot on, change it to a SCAR flip up sight, but you can still use a Tippmann sight or an airsoft version of the SCAR sight. Other than that, this has one more trick up its sleeve for the TGR1. That is going to be the bullpup kit. Now, the thing is, this was a limited production. If you can get your hands on this thing, more power to you. Nice, compact. However, I'm not sure if MaxSac is going to make this. However, if they don't, believe me, you could probably find aftermarkets or somebody that's able to customize something like this, and it will not be easy and not cheap. Okay, next up is going to be the Adaptive Combat Rifle, better known as the ACR. This one has a storied history, to say the least, as it is one of those weapons that is designed to be very modular, pretty much simple as possible to operate and to work with. Yet, due to mismanagement by Remington Arms and Bushmaster, this thing came out more expensive than what people were hoping it would be, as well as all of the conversions and caliber were not made available as was initially promised. However, this gun's legacy is still there. It is popular in video games like Call of Duty and Ghost Recon, but the biggest advantage that was good about this was the butt stock. An adapter kit came out to put the stock on the SCAR to make the SCAR better, but however, it is still a very popular gun design to work with. Next picture coming up right here is an Eric Engler custom job to turn the Tippmann X7 Phenom into an ACR, and he did a very damn good job on that. The particular one pictured here is the one with the electronic trigger on here, and it is still pretty damn badass. However, this can also work on a classic X7 as well, as the next picture will show. This one's a Takamo MK7 setup for the X7 Classic. As you can see, the ACR furniture on here. This particular build was done by a dear friend of mine whose name I do not want to put out there like that out of respect for her, but as you can see, for a mag-fed setup, this would be pretty damn sweet. Heavily inspired by actual sniper rifles like the Accuracy International Arctic Warfare series, Macmillan sniper rifles, the Chi-Tac Intervention, may I present the Karmatech SAR-12 sniper rifle. This happens to be the first purpose-built sniper platform for paintball players. Comes in two different configurations. Your classic bolt action configuration, which is a tricked out stock class, and a semi-auto configuration. This thing is beautifully well done, and I will say I interviewed the owner of the company, David Williams, and I will say that it was quite a breathtaking interview. You could check that out at my blog page, outerheavenpaintball.blogspot.com. But for all intents and purposes, this paintball marker was built with precision in mind and engineered specifically to work with shaped projectiles like the first strike round, but standard paintballs can be used, so this should definitely be something on your wish list. I almost forgot. Outer Heaven Paintball is now on Teesprings. Yes, that's right. I am now selling merchandise related for Outer Heaven Paintball, a mix of politically incorrect humor as well as funny paintball memes and stuff like that. My designs are continuously expanding every chance I get, so if you need something to show your love for my blog page, my YouTube channel, or just something that expresses your feelings about paintball and how you love the sport, check out teespring.com/outerheavenpaintball. Links will be in the description to this video, and don't forget to check it out, buy what you like, and keep checking back for more new products.